Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Viking Chat. And I'm delighted today to be joined by none other than Sir Ellie Rees. Thank you for joining me.
I did really think, how's he going to introduce me?
I thought you'd like
And
that
it
one.
didn't occur to me. That's very good. Thank you, Sir Christian.
So,
or Madam Christian.
There we go. Thank you. I'll take that title and run with
Equally
it. Thank
inappropriate.
you. Fabulous. So, Ellie, for those who don't know who you are, do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm Ellie Rees, and I founded and own and run an estate agency called Brickworks. We mainly sell property. We're sales only, resi sales, and we're London-based. We sort of sojourned to the Kent coast, softly, organically, Brickworks by sea. So we're selling in Ramsgate, Margate, in that part of the world now, which is lovely. I'm a fine artist by training, so I'm sort of like constantly apologising for my estate agency status, which is...
No, I don't think that's uncommon.
It's not, and I'm conflicted by it because I also want to own it, right? So I am an estate agent. I buy and sell houses for people on behalf of other people, and yet I suppose I still consider myself a fine artist. It's like a big fine art project.
So I've been on a journey with that. So it's one of the reasons why we called base property specialists and not base letting agents or estate agents.
Right.
Was when we started base in 2004. I was ashamed to be an estate agent.
Yeah.
You know, it was that thing of you'd go to dinner parties and be like, "What do you do?" And I'd say, "I work in property,"
I know,
which sounded so much more glamorous. They'd be like, "Oh, you're a developer," and I'd be like, "You know,
more.
kind of."
Although that's less ethical, maybe.
I know, but they weren't quite
not that far up on
quite as demonic as they 21 years ago,
That's
maybe as
also
they
true.
are perceived now. But
it's
no,
not like
I think-
saying I'm an architect.
no, and I think, look, I think a lot of people come in, and I've fallen in love with our industry, building base. But when I started it, I was embarrassed for, quite honestly, I was quite embarrassed for people to know that I was an estate and letting agent.
What's your background?
Actor. So I trained as a professional stage actor.
Did you?
Yeah.
Why is that not surprising?
My shy, demure, softly spoken,
Presentation
quiet
himself.
in the background. What gave it away?
But what a lovely way of putting it, that you fell in love with the industry, because I think probably like us, one of the things you realise that you're able to do is change things from the inside out, right? If you're sort of entrepreneurial of spirit and you start up your own business. And I think that for me, if I'm being really honest, I am a bit of a snob, and there is snobbery attached to agency for loads of reasons.
Yeah.
One of them is education.
Yeah.
And I come from a really...
It's not a recognised profession.
It's not recognised.
It's an
in
industry,
that way.
not a profession.
And that is it's a major issue in all ways. And I'm probably guilty of it myself. So I caveat with that I'm probably guilty of it myself.
But I think there's also a reason to it, right? There's also this thing
We
of
attract certain people.
But we also know there is a reality to our industry. There's a reason our industry has the reputation it does. And that's because,
100%.
if we're honest, half of our industry
Higher!
does a less than brilliant job. We
if we're lucky, half.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's there's a reason the consumer feels the way about our industry, and we've all had friends and had personal experiences and heard those nightmare stories.
But we've also had interaction with other. It's not like, I wouldn't say loads of my best friends are agents. Interestingly, we are in it's not litigious yet, but potentially sort of litigious dispute with a client about not paying fees. And I needed to call on somebody who had loads of industry experience just to get their angle. And there weren't that many people I could think of that would be non-competitive, genuinely knowledgeable, and also be really, really honest with me. And that I could say, I need your subjective opinion in a kind of
walk away
supportive way, like emotionally and otherwise. Very few. In fact, I'm just trying to think. I think there were two people. Shall I say who it was?
Name them. I mean, I always like recognising fabulous people.
And
superhero.
probably, I don't know, but probably we don't even agree on like everything all the time.
Since
and
when do
in
you
some
have to agree on
ways
everything?
we are competitive with each other. But when like when it came down to it, it was like, I can trust this person. And I think that's really rare. It's just really rare. And
I think it's one of the things that's made me fall in love with this industry. And like I say, we talked about me falling in love. I think the first, probably at least the first 5, if not the first 10 years of building base, I'm not sure I was in love with the industry.
did you hate it?
I'm not sure. Maybe. I mean, part of our reason for starting base was we felt that landlords and especially tenants were treated like filth.
Yeah.
And it's still a problem, particularly with tenants. There's this default psychology that runs through every business, almost every letting business, and you only have to sit in the office and listen. If you get to listen in an unfiltered office environment, the language used around tenants is shockingly consistent in our industry about,
I think buyers and sellers too, you know?
Yeah.
I think sales is potentially not as bad.
I don't think sales is bad. I think there's a default kind of attitude towards letting agents. But also, it was the bullshit bravado.
Yeah.
That our industry is well known for. The pinstripe suit, the loud tie, the flash watching car, that brash kind of 1980s-esque kind of image of what our industry is. And there was still a lot of that. But what's made me fall in love with the industry is people like Vicky and Spencer Lawrence and Sue Gidney and Teresa Wallace and Ellie and Sir Ellie Rees. And is, what I've loved is, but also the different businesses that have come out. So, like or loathe them, I hate the way they attack the industry, but Purple Bricks drove a significant shift in some mindsets about an agent's attitude to what a consumer wants from an experience.
Well, it's democratized.
That they don't understand what's involved, different. But then Modern House, loved what Modern House and then Inargo have done in terms of questioning what an agent is and that approach. And I feel that kind of more aligns in many ways with what you've done, a more artistic, architectural approach to it. Very design-led. Your listings feel like you're looking through a glamorous interiors magazine.
Marketing. I mean, they just upped the bar and upped the ante with marketing in a way that they said, let's make it editorial. They came from editorial.
And look, I find it fascinating that we don't talk about them more in the industry because people
don't want to.
They have avoided agents. They don't hire agents.
No, neither do we actually. But I've tried to talk to them. I've tried to talk about them more. The one time I did it on a podcast, I got really shut down, and I got
by the podcast or by comments after.
No, by the host of the podcast.
See, I find that fascinating
because, people are jealous. People are jealous because it's so successful and it's such a good idea, right? It's fear. We only ever get really, really angry if we feel something's deeply unfair or unjust or we're frightened, right? And this is, I would say in general, like forget the Modern House as an example because there's been a paradigm shift in marketing and the presentation of homes since they came along. It's indisputable, so let's not try to dispute it. They don't do everything in the way that I would, and I think there's room for difference and distinction. Right?
There is no one right way, right?
Absolutely
it's
not.
Just calling you out to question how you do it.
Could we have started our agency without their idea? By the way, they took their idea from America. I mean, everything doesn't come from a vacuum. What I'm interested in is that movement, how we borrow from each other.
And it was nothing rocket science. I don't think it was anything. None of us,
But they did it. But they did it.
I was raised in a house where my father was an art director in advertising. So I was raised constantly questioning everything I saw. How did it make me feel? How did the layout? Did I like it? Did it resonate with me? So I've always had that kind of, and particularly upper market sales, prior to Modern House, I've looked at the market, particularly someone who works in lettings, I've looked at the market.
Just down your daggers.
And I'm just like,
it's just the daggers.
You're selling a £5 million house and you've taken photos on your iPhone.
You've only taken 2.
Yeah.
That's what I really don't understand. Is like the volume of photos on such expensive property, or the write-up doesn't, the copy isn't like descriptive or really well written prose. It's like, why haven't you hired a copywriter for this massive fee that you're going to get?
Yeah, exactly.
The copywriter, by the way, would cost you £125,000
fee that you're going to get.
But okay, we mustn't go too much like that, otherwise we won't get to the nub of the thing. But this idea that we are threatened. I think the other thing about the modern house that's quite interesting is that I do think they are snobby, right? And I think
for sure.
But that snobbishness is something that I would say the overwhelming majority
they've embraced the snobbishness
they've embraced it. So you could even say it's elitist.
They've embraced the snobbishness that we've admitted to ourselves.
Yes, but it's kind of next level, because the way that theirs works is sort of scarcity marketing, right? So we're going to reject you if you're not good enough to be part of our club.
Yeah.
That's a badge of honour.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it's really clever and it's brilliant for their business. And I really admire it. I mean, I have to be very clear. I really admire it. It's not my way.
No.
Because that's not who I am. I'm a more kind of political person. I think there should be a more human element. I think it should be less about design. I think it should be more home.
I think, interestingly, it hasn't evolved.
But there's room for that.
Yeah.
And there's room for this. And there's room for, the market isn't so saturated.
Yeah. What they do hasn't really evolved past that initial, we're reimagining property marketing.
Yeah.
Like you said, it hasn't, you go in now and it doesn't feel or look substantially different to how it did, I don't know, when they launched 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Much longer, 20.
10, 20, blimey. Yeah. I didn't realise they were quite that old. But yeah, I don't really feel like it's changed again, but then their aesthetic and their look and their feel is
so strong.
It's such a part of their brand.
It's so strong, so it doesn't need to be. But and they've almost become like a content creator as well.
For sure. You look at their social following.
It's amazing. And I know that 1 million followers on Instagram doesn't mean that those people are buying those properties.
But it doesn't hurt. Right?
But it doesn't hurt. And it's great for the brand. What I think is really interesting is then taking, you can take all the good parts of all agencies and the bad parts. You identify what's good and you use it and you bring something of yourself to it, and you identify the bad things and you eradicate them. I think where we came in was because Rex worked at the Modern House right at the very, very beginning.
Right. I think I knew that, actually.
Culturally, it wasn't what he was looking for. And I think some of these design-led kind of boutique agencies, not just them, and there are a few now.
No, I mean, you've got ones like Story of Home
and Acoot, which has been was David McVicker, who's now set up a buying agency called Seckford with Rosie Faulkner, who's also ex-Modern House. I mean, all these people are, like in all agency, it's a small world.
Yeah.
I think that scratch the surface of a lot of them, and I'm not saying they're like Foxtons or Dexters underneath, but I do think that some of the kind of pillars of the business models are not as progressive as, say, Brickworks is, or you would like to hope when you look at the way it's presented.
Yeah.
Soft and touchy-feely, and then underneath the surface it's still bottom line, it's still individual commission. I think a lot of the stuff that needs to be identified and kind of addressed and dealt with is invisible.
Yeah.
And I don't know about their business in particular, and I wouldn't want to comment. But I just think
that's one thing. I have no idea of P&L within that business.
A lot of it
is a fabulous looking business.
A lot of it's superficial, which isn't to negate the success.
No,
you can't.
No,
right? But then there's room for loads of other really exciting innovation to happen, and I think we always talk about this kind of conflict because politically, you may laugh, but we're basically socialists. And property...
I mean, I'm very happy with that label. I'd say 98% of estate agents have just twitched and had a fit. What?
I know. And I have...
Simon Whale and Tom McGee are about the only two other people I know. And one of those isn't even an agent who's just sat up and gone...
I've never met Tom, but... I love him.
That's us.
David Mintz.
Mincy, there we go. We found a fourth. And he's an ex-agent, so...
Yeah, he's not even an agent. Yeah, and I'm aware of that, but what a great place to be. Like, position-wise, what a great place to be in an industry. You're like the total outlier. Yeah. Like, that's why this has happened, right? Because we're tiny, proportionately within the industry. We are tiny. We have, like, no market share. We don't have a massive turnover. Most people know who Brickworks are, right?
Very similar with Base, right?
Which is really
small
similar.
Business,
tiny business,
big industry footprint.
You know, it's a kind of, and it's hugely flattering, but it's because of that distinction. And we talk about difference a lot. And then somebody recently, it was an executive coach, said to me, you know, difference is one thing, but difference doesn't create recognition. Distinction creates recognition. You can be different and doing different for like 10 years and nobody would know about it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I think, like really crystallizes the thing. And so then so we would describe ourselves kind of politically very left of centre. And that's like incongruous within the industry. It's kind of oxymoronic. People sort of don't know what to do with it. I came in going, oh, I'm a feminist, and everyone was like, you know, a very well-known women's group in the estate agency sort of were kind of like, we're not feminists, you know. It was sort of very, we're not, and it's like, it's okay. It's okay. And by the way you are, because of the way that you're behaving and the things that you're saying, and we want the same thing. It's all right, you know. And I think,
and what that is different to everyone, right?
There are some basic tenets.
There are, of course, but like you said, the visualization of what a feminist is, this kind of bra burning, like...
Yeah, and again, it's language.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a stigma, like there is with estate agents, to feminism. Yeah. And I think that, so if you take the political kind of position and just who Rex and I are, Rex is my husband, by the way.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Ellie's not talking about the CRM system. Sorry, guys. You can take the principles of your life and the thing and look at an industry and identify stuff. And then you can kind of go, okay, what's interesting here is, because I had a fine art background, and Rex had worked for like everyone you can imagine, Winkworth, KFH, Felicity J. Lord, he did like done it. He's got the checklist.
He really has.
He's
earned his stripes.
He's earned his stripes.
And he was a very high performing sales agent. Really didn't like the culture and was really unhappy. And so you can kind of, you know, it's a bit like a big, it's not even a business plan. It was like a sort of big Venn diagram. And I came from the arts, and he would say, well, this is what we do. And I would go, why?
Yeah.
And then he'd say, well, this is what we do. And I go, why?
Why? Yeah.
Not because I'm particularly intelligent or brilliant, and not because it's rocket science like with the modern has. It's
none
just
of,
because
none of it's rocket science.
Sometimes need someone from the outside.
And look, and I think that...
To go, why?
That inability to ask why, and I don't think this is unique to our industry, but the inability to ask why is the biggest thing that holds our industry back. This thing of like, oh, we do it because that's how it's always been done.
Correct.
We do it because that's how I was trained to do it.
It's tradition.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then when you start to shake that, that's when it becomes threatening.
Yeah.
Because you're shaking the status quo.
Yeah.
Which is shaking the patriarchy, which is shaking the boards of directors. And they are, you know...
it's fascinating, isn't it, though, that they get so shaken by something that really, I know the overarching objective is bigger, but fundamentally it's a very superficial, very simple.
And a lot of the time I'm just kind of like, oh, it's little old me. You know, why is everyone... It's just me going... I mean, sometimes I'm probably too assertive, but... You know, I'd be aggressive if I was a woman and assertive if I was a man. But sometimes I'm probably... But, you know, you're just sort of going, well, actually, that's not true. You know, your gender pay gap is this. Or, you know, we're not dealing with subjective opinion a lot of the time. It's facts. Yeah. And people do not like it. They do not like being called out.
Yeah. Well, I've had no response to that solicitor the other day. Well, so for those who didn't see, Ellie and I had a quick interaction of many because we had a solicitor email us finalisation documents, land registry documents from our office renewal. And And the solicitor emailed me, addressed the email just to me, but copied Anne, my business partner, into the email, had previously interacted directly with Anne, knew she was a co-founder and fellow company director, but didn't feel the need to address the email to both of us. And we were talking about this before, like weirdly, if he'd just sent the email to me and not copied her in, probably wouldn't have been an issue.
No.
But the fact that he had the thought to manually copy her into the email. He had that thought of, oh, I must include Anne, but then didn't think it was remotely inappropriate to send an email to one company director and completely ignore the other. And so, I just sent a reply back saying, thanks for getting this through. Can't believe it took 11 months. By the way, it is 2025. If you're going to send an email, you should really send it to all the company directors and address all of them, particularly when this related to an issue relating to base. And everyone within our two businesses knows, Anne now 90% of base is Anne.
Yeah.
And my focus is predominantly on depository now. So if you're going to recognise one of the company directors within base, pick the right one. But no, I called it out very politely. But I had...
Were you a bit facetious, though? Were you a bit kind of like... Well, you said, I don't know if you've noticed it's 2025.
Yeah, I mean, that's my style. I'm always a little bit... I will always have a little poke in the ribs.
Yeah.
But
I won't call someone... way to do it.
I won't call someone, I won't call someone incompetent or unprofessional or be more spiteful than that.
Yeah.
But no, there will always be a proverbial ribbing of, dude, you could do better.
Yeah.
But I think what's fascinating is there was zero acknowledgement of that. There was no like, whoops, sorry, did it in a rush, or no, you're absolutely right. I'll make a note of that for next time.
Or I never thought of that before.
Yeah.
And interestingly, or I didn't do it,
Yeah, or defend it. There was nothing.
Oh my goodness. I totally was on automatic pilot and I just forgot to look. What's been can you imagine how many non-replies I've had from the dear sirs?
Oh my God.
What's been interesting is just such a broad range of responses to dear sirs. And when you do it, when you call it out one by one.
Some of the justifications must be alarming and hilarious.
I mean, I've got some really good top drawer lines. Like, what do you want me to say, dear amoeba? Someone said that, dear amoeba. I was like, no, not really, just not dear sirs. Don't want to be called an amoeba either. It's the sort of Piers Morgan kind of, what do they want to identify as a table? It's that, isn't it? It's the woke thing. It's just anti-woke. It's like a big, generic, huge, nebulous mass of people who are anti-woke.
Fabulous label.
And so non-specific as well. But it's really interesting because I ended up, my sort of comrades in the dear sirs ended up being, really reputable, important lawyers, including senior counsel at BBC, Sarah McCall, and various other people, and Juliet Scholker got behind it. And we just had, and Donna Denise Smith, who was, quietly incredibly supportive, and she's going to be the new president of the Law Society. She's.
Have you had any big male lawyers stand up and support it?
That's quite interesting.
Because I don't think that's necessarily important or crucial, but
not really.
I also find it telling.
Not really high profile, but I tell you who's always been really, really supportive, and I can't remember his name or the name of the business, and I could blame that on the menopause. Peter
Ambrose of the partnership. Love Peter.
Okay, so
I did hope that's where you were going. Yeah, so I'm like, I don't know a lot of solicitors, but I do know Peter.
Pete, he's not the vice president of the Law Society, but within our industry, really well respected and just lovely and been sort of beating that drum.
But
anyway,
also he's one of these ones
really
like us. He asks why. They were one of the first agents, and they didn't scream about it, that had a proper kind of case tracking portal. Yeah. And it was just that thing of,
Yeah.
are we hiding this information from clients?
I've heard him speak, and he's so eloquent. And that's the other thing. It's about actually, it's not about education. It's about thought and consideration. And I think a lot of the time, what is happening, it is the ask why, but it's beyond the ask why. It's like you have to go further than why, and you have to actually interrogate things.
Yeah.
Really, if you really want to do something really well and you want to be at the top of your game, it's like this sort of interrogation. And
it's questioning the subtleties, isn't it? So
and the nuance and all the variables.
I created a business, and now 2 businesses with a female co-founder and partner. That was never a question that entered my mind of going into business with Anne. At no point was there a question of relating to the fact that she happened to be a woman.
Yeah.
About whether I wanted to do a business with her or, So I think the thing I've found interesting running a business with a woman, I've said to you before, we've almost always had a 50% or more balance of women within the business. We're also usually 50% or more LGBTQ. But a lot of that has kind of just happened naturally. There hasn't been a lot of forethought to that.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting, and as people like yourselves have raised this question and this debate and this, the need to question this stuff, it's the subtleties, the dear sirs, the emails without, I replied to that solicitor and I copied Anne into it. And, this is someone who, we've lived and breathed together for 21, 22 years, and I get an email back from Anne going, God, you're bloody lovely, aren't you? And but I think what's fascinating for me, it's the silent sufferance for women of the variety of shit that you lot put up with throughout your lives, from being fledgling women into careers and then on into later life and menopause and everything else. It's this array of small and big battles that you face throughout your life for a myriad of reasons that you all quietly, or typically quietly, bear. And you have your support network. But for me as a bloke, what's been interesting for me the last 10 years is kind of getting to peek behind that curtain a little bit, and having this dialogue opened up and being like, fucking hell,
But in a way, the conflict that's created is where the interesting stuff kind of comes from, right?
No,
so going back to this, we're socialists, but working within this like starkly capitalist model, because like property is theft, right? So property is like, it's the cornerstone of that, of capitalism in some ways. Like we know that it's, in many ways, one of the cornerstones of the British economy. It's like and post Thatcher, the ownership, the cultural ideas around the ownership of property, right? Which is why we have the culture
and kind
of
of your value as a human being,
your value as a human being, your
success,
the metrics by which we measure ourselves, monetarily.
And I think that's why we've got a problem with so many young people now, because we've taken away what has for the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years been considered one of the cornerstones of achievement and success.
Right.
And now for a lot of young people, short of inheritance winning the lottery, and inheritance is questionable with many generations now, the idea of property ownership is something either very far down the line, if unimaginable.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why we've got a lot of problems at the moment with younger people in the workplace. Aspirationally, what are we asking them to achieve? We see this talked about a lot, and
which is why Dear Sirs is really important, because you are not going to have a generation of people who will put up with that.
Yeah.
Because the conversation for younger people, I've got a 13-year-old, the conversation for younger people is not, are you a boy or are you a girl, by the way?
No.
Right?
No, they couldn't give shit.
It's way more complicated.
Yeah.
And like even non-binary is an umbrella term.
Yeah.
There are, and you can call it woke until you're blue in the face. There are still hundreds of thousands, millions of these people, and they are going to be the new workforce.
Yeah.
And we'll be dead.
Yeah.
So it's irrelevant what we think.
Yeah.
And we can fight against it all we like, or we can going back to this conflict thing, it's like actually when you're in the weeds of this, it's almost a sort of intellectual and philosophical debate, that kind of asking of the why and that questioning. And what I think is estate agency became so transactional that any kind of idea of like the philosophy or notion of home just got lost, right? Yeah. So then, of course, you stop on asking those questions, and there's not enough time because of volume, and it's busy, and sell, and on to the next one, and bottom line, and that's what creates this. It's short-term gain. It's like if you sell, it's KPIs, it's those monetary metrics. If you sell this many houses in this amount of time, you'll be flown around Canary Wharf in a helicopter.
You'll go to Dubai.
Yeah, you'll go to Dubai. Who torture their princesses? No, it's short-term monetary gain only. Can you edit this, by the way?
Oh no, and we don't edit it. No, I was just checking all the time, just because I'm very good at waffling, and I think we're really definitely going to use the time. No, it's good.
So there's. You've made me lose my train of thought, but it's the menopause. I can't remember.
We were talking about simplistic targets and the drive for capitalism.
Let's call it what it is. It's the Fox's Dexters. It's short term, and you'll get a car and this and that, and it's like, and if you don't, you'll be left at home and you'll have to sit in the office and in the basement of the office.
But I think even that sat, bringing it again back to this thing, because there was an interesting interview with Chris Watkin, and I forget the lady's name. I'm pretty sure she was a Belvoir. I'm pretty sure she was the Belvoir franchisee, and it was, why are 20-somethings so entitled? It's something along that line. It was very close to that. And look, I think all businesses, every generation, struggle with the new generation. We are not the first generation to go, young people. Every generation has bemoaned young people, but it's understanding that shift of priorities, aligned, what motivates you, what drives you. It was interesting. I was at the Unchained's Voice of the Agent conference last week. And what was really interesting in there was we had Experian and YouGov.
Simon Ledbetter might say he was a socialist.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Or leaning.
A data-led socialist. As long as it's data-led, I think he's on board with pretty much anything. But what was really interesting was we had YouGov and Experian do talk back-to-back about data. And there was quite a big focus in there looking at Gen Z, just in a fun way. And it was, it was saying, this is what we do know about Gen Z. And it was, there were funny things like they're less likely to like beans on toast. There was random stuff in there, but there was stuff about, they will choose a business based on its environmental credentials, based on its social ethics, so on and so forth. And again, it was really interesting because it was asking this question, and this wasn't even looking at a staff as an employment basis. It was looking at it as a customer or client basis. And it was like, right, they're not your client yet, but in 10 years, they absolutely will be. So 10 years from now, how does your business look to your new primary client base?
But that's the long game.
And that is a fascinating question. And then my thing, I bring it back to as an employer, because, like I said, we've had our struggles. I've talked to a lot of agents this year who I love and respect as people and businesses, and also they are incredibly focused on the people in their business and how they support and motivate and drive those people in terms of learning and questioning what that looks like. But there is definitely this kind of black hole of aspiration, I feel like, at the moment for a lot of young people, because it's, whether you go for a really like money sales driven role, or you choose to go into a different approach to agency, I think we all fundamentally turn up to work, hopefully to get some enjoyment and satisfaction from the work we actually do, but we also fundamentally do it to earn a living and to achieve certain things. And as we've touched on, one of those has always been owning your own home. You do this, you put in your 10 years hard graft, you can get yourself on the property ladder, and then you can start eking your way along from there.
And by the way, I just want to caveat, I own my own home.
Yeah, I don't.
And, I'm not, I do realise that there's hypocrisy here and double standards. And that is also what is part of it being interesting. And that's where I also think the good ideas can come from, because it's conflict. It's you've got to ask yourself big questions then as well.
The thing, I wonder with young people, if we're we've come to a point in society where there are substantial changes. A, access to housing. B, this new era of AI. We're entering a very interesting phase into the way further education is being perceived. It's overexpanded. The simple fact of the matter is there are way too many kids going and getting shitty degrees that aren't worth anything, coming out with a shit ton of debt, and then their
it's
degree
the debt,
is
isn't it? I was the last year that didn't have to pay fees.
Yeah. And I just wonder if with these things we're kind of asking the wrong question of not like, how do we manage them and how do we kind of contain this challenge?
But Simon Sinek or
but how do we understand why that is going there? And if there is no big reward for going above and beyond,
why would you?
And you're not saving the environment or changing your local society, why would you give a shit?
Yeah.
Why would you turn up? And you've got an employer who pays you just over the minimum wage, or splashes out on living wage for you. Again, you look at our industry and income. And again, this is another thing. I think it was Simon at Unchained who did some analysis the other day and was looking at what a typical negotiator makes versus a shelf stacker in a supermarket. Not much difference. And yet, very simple job, turn up, no high pressure sales meetings, no pressure over targets, no working into the evenings, no Saturday work, or if it is, it's very much, much more structured. So what are we doing to attract people at the offset?
But then the dream has always been that there are a few people who can reap huge rewards, right?
There are, but are we willing to let that? I think that number shrinks as our industry goes on. That number is shrinking
for sure.
And can we run an industry on 5% of the industry having a successful career, whilst the other 95%? And
but then you just have to change the commission structure for
that's it,
and salary your staff.
But commission structure, like we got rid of pretty much all commissions years ago. We felt it was the wrong motivation. We've taken an attitude of always paying good salaries. We pay kind of top 5% of the industry for roles, and we've kind of always taken that. We're very much on par with any of your big blue chip companies. In terms of, pretty much all of our roles are roles that run the day-to-day business. We don't have this negotiator or sales role. We see it as it's a holistic, it's all part of the sales process. Well, lettings for us, it's all part of, we're not trying to trick someone into renting a home that they didn't completely want and paying more than we think it's worth. We want people to move into a home that they love and they're happy with.
I don't envy you working in lettings.
I love it. We love it. Genuinely love it. I mean, like most of the time it's good. Yes, you have those fringe things. You have those tenants who you will never be happy no matter what. You've got those landlords who will never be happy no matter what. The style, and we're very direct about how we are as a business. And that's the nice thing when you become a more mature business, when you hit that 5-10 years, you can, if you haven't already, set out your, your stall, so to speak. And, and I've said many times, one of the best things we did after about 10 years was when we finally turned around and we asked 10 clients to leave. We wrote a very polite email to 10 clients. And it was the best thing we ever did, because 5 of them we barely heard a word from. Fine. Whatever. You know, and the other 5...
work with you anyway.
The other 5 picked up... The other 5 were on the phone within 5 minutes of that email hitting their inbox. What have I done?
Yeah.
And they almost overnight went from being one of our most difficult clients to one of our best clients and best advocates.
That's so interesting.
Which is fascinating when you question. And again, it comes into this thing of, you know, how people... I know I'm guilty of this with sales calls, cold sales calls. I try not to be. It depends what mood they catch me in. Usually I'd like to say most of the time, I'm like, dude, appreciate the job, not for me, take me off your database, please don't call me again. But occasionally will catch me when I'm feeling not as quite, and they will get the rough edge of my attitude and not justified. They're just doing their job. They're doing what's paid. I have obviously given my contact details at some point to someone in some business where I've allowed that information to be used for sales purposes. But yeah, I think that default reaction is what I'm talking about.
We're talking about so many issues, and I think that's what's really interesting about property and estate agency. But going back to this idea of young people, Simon Sinek just says, just listen. I mean, we just don't listen. We're just not, like you say, maybe we're not asking the right questions, but we're not just listening to what it is that they are saying, and we're too quick to shut it down. And Mary Porter's really kind of taken that and run with that, and I really. Well,
I think also some of the problems are so big, they're terrifying. So because they're so big, it's like, oh.
Well, it feels insurmountable.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to Dear Sirs, what was interesting about that was I can't challenge sexism in society on my own. Yeah. It'd be completely and utterly impossible. And so it's this thing of you identify something that is within your control, that you can potentially act on, that's really small, and it's like this tiny little
you take bites
thread that you start to pull, and that's how we dismantle it all and really kind of start to look at it and deal with it and address it and make things better for ourselves.
Like a piranha,
the consumer.
Right? By yourself, you take a little nibble, but you find your crowd and you can actually devour a whole shark.
But these small kind of customs of industry, if you like, accepted ones that have just always been the way it's been done, whatever it might be, cold calling or whatever it might be, it's just the accumulation of the thing. It isn't the thing ipso facto by itself. It's the same as the tip of the iceberg thing. It's like, and so once then it becomes manageable, it becomes accessible, first stop Dear Sirs, next stop, ban the boards or whatever. Taking something really small and achieving something off the back of that makes you realise that actually I can't tackle misogyny single-handedly.
I mean...
But I've done my own bit.
Don't sell yourself short, Ellie, I think.
But I've done my own bit. And
that's it. And I think that's all you can do, right? Direction. I think it's that thing of, you never know what the outcome of your efforts will be, but it's that old adage, right? As long as you can go home at the end of the day and look yourself in the mirror and be like, you tried. Yeah.
And that's about... this notion of, I've only come across this quite recently, which probably just makes me very naive and ignorant. But like that notion of a legacy business rather than a business that only exists to make money for the people who work for it at any given time, the end. Yeah. And I really like that idea.
Yeah.
That cultural shifts, paradigm shifts, political shifts, because you want to create a legacy. I mean, Anita Roddick is the best. Anita and Gordon Roddick are the best example. I'm not comparing myself to her. But, the Body Shop
I just like business.
changed everything.
And look, Lush, Lush has kind of been the millennium's version of Body Shop, right?
Sure.
Their stance on social media. You know, there's some really powerful, and how fascinating that two kind of beauty product shops.
And still we go into Lush and we spend £1 million on a couple of watermelon-shaped bath bombs. I mean, this is the other thing when I talk about politics, is that, you know, there has to be a space where it's okay to feel a certain way politically and not be money grabbing and still want to have a nice cup of coffee and buy a handbag.
That's something I think interesting I find with our industry is this, you know, like you, I'm very outspoken about stuff. I've been very outspoken about housing issues for quite a long time. You know, the lack of social housing, I think, is the number one contributor to pretty much every pain point within housing at the moment. But I'm very outspoken politically. I try to keep context to it. You know, I mean, I'm very quick to highlight when our next housing minister comes in how many we've been through and what a shit show we've got with the revolving door of housing ministers and so on and so forth. I think what's interesting with our industry is there is a lot of political caution. Oh, we can't possibly say that because the Chancellor might not like it and might decide to do X, Y, Z. And it's like, I don't know, do we really think politicians are that petty? I mean, maybe.
But also small p politics, in that I've been so surprised how few people are prepared, for example, in terms of social media, like publicly online, to actually say what they think. Like, how many conversations have you had privately that are just not just a bit different, but like the polar opposite of what that person actually thinks?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I've had conversations, and I've actually said to people to their face, I wish you would put this person online because this is way more interesting.
And it's disappointing. It's so disappointing because actually I've called people out a lot.
But is it surprising, right? I still, at pretty much every industry event or conference I go to, I will still overhear at least one conversation about what an estate agent should wear. And I'm like...
Yeah, but Christian, now we have to face the truth, which is that we're talking about loads of people that we know and loads of people that will be watching this podcast.
Well, that's fine.
Well, it is fine, but what it means is... So I'm going to talk about this a little bit, because what's happened to me is I've just had to become a complete lone wolf. Not complete lone wolf. There are some people who are like deeply supportive, but very few. Like, you can get yourself ostracized really quickly. And that's because people don't want the status quo to change because it doesn't suit them. It has to be. There isn't another reason. Or they're genuinely worried for their jobs.
And I think that is part of it. I think also part of it are people are just overwhelmed with just trying to do the day-to-day.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that, you know, right or wrong, whatever. But I do think there are lots of people who... They don't see that as a relevant or essential part of their working life.
No.
They just see their job as something they turn up.
It is intrinsically part of their working life. I mean, that's the other...
If we want things to change and if we want a better industry and a better society, then yes, everything we do should always be called into question. I think you should always be questioning, you know, whether you're at work or on holiday or in a shop or at a restaurant.
For sure. And I can't remember who said it. It was probably like Eleanor Roosevelt or someone like that. And this is definitely a misquote. But like, you know, when people say don't be political about something, like everything's political.
Everything's politics.
Everything. Yeah. Right? So we have to start with everything's political. It just is. Yeah. You know, whether we choose to buy our coffee at Starbucks or whether we choose to buy our coffee, you know, at the Independent down the road, that we're making a decision that speaks to who we are and what our values are and what we believe in, and whether we believe in like ethical trade or whether we believe in like huge multinational conglomerates and tax avoidance.
Bring up Starbucks. What was it the other day? They did a study on businesses with the greatest imbalance between CEO and average income, and Starbucks won They won.
They were
Top
up
prize.
there.
Their CEO earns 6,666 times
more
what their average employee makes. And not only that, I think they recently sacked 15,000 staff, but they put the CEO's pay up by more than they'd saved by sacking those people. So yeah, but look, I mean,
people are voting with their feet, and I think coffee is a terrible example, and I've used it before. But
we also have this weird thing about making money, right? There is this weird idolization of people. You know, I mean, Musk's $1 trillion pay packet.
Yeah,
it's
revolting.
Seeing people out there going, no, but he's worth it.
But it's also, as a woman, so there's, I don't know if you know Cindy Gallop, but she...
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Am I right in saying advertising world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy,
bold,
amazing, she just
absolute,
tells it she says, I am the Michael Bay I'd blow shit up.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's incredible, and LinkedIn are shutting down her algorithms so that she's got a gazillion followers and she's not getting, that it's really sinister actually in some ways.
It's fucking weird.
She interviewed Davina McCall recently about menopause and stuff, because that's her thing, isn't it, at the moment, which is great. But she was saying, and now I've forgotten, she was saying for women, what we can't do is we also can't kind of go, money is the enemy and money is wrong and money equals being greedy, because actually for women in particular we have to have financial independence, because unless we are creating a kind of ecosystem of our own in terms of like a female economy, then we can't, because we know startups, for example, and like the funding that goes to female startups and CEOs, it's like nothing.
It's a drop of a drop.
It's nothing. And even in established industry, 13% less than 13% of estate agency owners are women. The discrepancy is massive. It's not a bit, it's massive. The gender pay gap in our industry, much, much higher than the national average. And so she's saying we need to sort of reframe and rethink our relationship with money so that it becomes not necessarily ipso facto a bad thing to want.
Money's not a dirty word.
But to create this ecosystem for women to be able to fund each other, support each other, donate to each other. And, one of the reasons we have an all-female team, again, not by design. No. It happened that way, but it has become a distinction that really works.
But I think it's interesting when we talk about wealth. I think this is often where the waters get muddied, is we start talking about wealth and all of a sudden there's this belief that includes people who if you earn £100,000, you're rich. No, you're fucking not.
Yeah.
In most countries, in most modern Western societies, if you earn 100 grand, you are not rich. You're doing well. Yeah. You are a successful individual. You will be in the top 5% of earners.
You still need a double income to buy a house in London.
You still need a double income to buy a house in London. Absolutely. And it's, I think that it's a really important point, is that when I talk about wealth, I talk about insane wealth. Like, I genuinely don't think billionaires should exist. You mean
tax the rich? You mean like the yachts in Catalonia
Billionaires shouldn't exist. Like no human is worth £1 billion or $1 billion. No one should have those assets. Certainly not $1 trillion. But yes, we absolutely. But in that whole conversation, this whole idea of starving entrepreneurs by saying wealth or success is wrong. No, absolutely not. I think everyone should be enfranchised to achieve what their own perception of success is. And I think it's also naive and quite grotesque to say what a legitimate, if you want to live in a football style mansion and have 3 Ferraris on your drive, good for you. Wicked. If that's your idea of success. Freudian slip there.
It took a really strange turn.
And that's when it got spicy. And I don't even have the menopause to blame on that. No, if that's your idea of success, awesome. Like, each to their own. I think, the debate I've seen, this conversation out there that is basically like, let's look at 10 million plus.
Yeah.
People who have assets and cash over 10 million quid. Because I don't think anyone can argue that someone with £10 million or more in cash or assets is struggling in any you are set for life.
Yeah.
No, unless you've got literally like 1 million children, your family is set for life. If you've got 10 million quid plus, you're good. But you trickle down from that, and there are questions. So I think it's a really interesting topic. And again, when we talk about the perception by some of society, probably by a third of Britain, that 100,000, if you earn 100,000, you're rich. Because for that segment of society, earning that amount is unfathomable. That's as unfathomable as becoming a millionaire or a billionaire.
We are still, food banks are, running out of food.
They're not owning the thing, and opening faster than ever. We've got more and more everywhere. And yet we've got vying political leaders going on news channels at the moment talking about how the minimum wage is too high, and that's what's stifling business. I mean, we're in danger of going into just the broadest.
We're really
black hole.
I'm looking over the cliff. I'm feeling like I'm on a precipice and I need to take some steps back. But yeah, I mean, it's complicated though, and it's very difficult to talk. Like, I'm not an economist. I'm also not, a politics specialist, and a lot of it I don't understand. I can talk about what I can talk about with experience within the industry. And I think, and what we can do, and again, that goes back to the bite-sized chunks thing. And I think that it's kind of morality and ethics as much as it is anything else. Otherwise, you're in danger of being a hypocrite as well. Or one, it is not you.
I'm aware we're going to have to bring this around to some sort of conclusion in a minute. And
that's
as always, I don't know what
we're going out for lunch.
We're going out for lunch. We'll continue this conversation off record. But look, I think, do call people out, and do call situations out. Don't necessarily need to call people out, but call out situations. Find safe ways to question something that you don't think is right. I think.
But what does that mean? What do you safe mean? Sounds like a euphemism, because I think that what I have tried to call people out privately.
And it's
made no difference whatsoever, and I don't get any acknowledgement whatsoever. The only time anything has actually been effective is when someone's embarrassed. Which sounds awful.
And it's difficult. It's different given the person's sex, the person's age, sexual orientation, career path, what business they're in, everything else.
Position.
The only thing I can relate it to personally, probably the clearest point where I've put my foot down in an environment was actually the Zoopla Lettings Advisory Board. So that's now been running 4 years now. It's now 11 people. I think when we started it was 6. And we very quickly established that we needed more people around the table. Right? I think 6 months, a year in, we were like, we need more minds, we need more voices at the table. At the time, there was one woman around the table.
Was there anybody from the global majority, or is everybody white?
White, one LGBTQ.
Because we don't talk about race or cultural ethnicity in this industry either. It's a massive taboo.
Actually, no. We had Nicola Thieveson, who was the one woman on the board, and is also of mixed ethnicity. But yes, it wasn't
diverse.
So, but the interesting thing was we all agreed, right, we need to grow this, we need to make it bigger. We should go from 6 to 11. And as we did in a casual thing, it was like, right, who do we think would be a great addition to the board? And we went round and everyone gave a name or two. And it was a man's name, 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 and it got to me. And I just say with the greatest of respect, I think we've got enough white dicks around the table. And the nice thing was, that was the reaction of the whole table.
Yeah.
it was, I always, like, as I said earlier on, you know, I will always give a little poke in the ribs and I will call stuff out, but I will do it with a smile on my face and a wink and be like, I'm not saying you're all misogynist pricks, but let's just look around the table and be like, actually.
But also, you are a white man, and it's your privilege that you can do that without a backlash.
Yes.
I've sort of done that before, and I have just
I bet.
had hellfire.
I bet.
As if I've sort of like murdered someone's granny.
I bet.
Can't believe it.
Yeah.
And I'm not a woman of colour.
And that's why I say, you know, it's easy for me to say this because I sit in this highly privileged demographic.
Yeah, of course. And so do I, by the way.
A great education, you know, middle class background, white, etc. Blah, blah, blah. So, but sometimes, and I'm not going to call it, but I was at a meetup with a supplier group recently, or the forming of a potential supplier group. There was 14 people in the room, one woman. Now, fairness to the person who organised it, 4 women had originally agreed to attend, and in the 2 days before, 3 of them had said, sorry, had something come up.
Yeah.
But 4 to 14 is still not a good enough balance.
We were shortlisted for an award recently.
Well, the interesting thing was we called it out. The person who organised it was like, yeah, but it's not that easy, is it? And I just went, with the greatest of respect, it really fucking is. I was like, you can't guarantee week in, week out it's going to be bang on 50.
No,
but guess what? Sometimes it's going to be 60% women. And sometimes it will be 60% men. Because shit happens and life changes. But I was like, every business represented around this table has at least one senior woman or founder at the helm. And yet none of them are in the room. So it's just awareness. And I'm like, as the organiser of the event, it falls on you. You organise the event. How do you want this event and this potential group to be perceived?
Yeah.
And sometimes it really is that fucking easy. And with Zoopla, like I said, I made that cheeky comment. Everyone had a chuckle, and we were all like, "Yeah, absolutely right." And then we set out to make the board more diverse. And unfortunately, we struggled to make it more ethnically diverse.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to, we're way too late in the chat for us to wade into that now. And that is a very nuanced and very difficult and challenging subject, because my ambitions there were very honest and very true, but I really hit some brick walls on that.
Yeah.
But what we did manage to do was bring 4 or 5 women onto the board, and it is pretty much 50-50 now. And interesting, what I also sought out to do with that was making sure that the women were diverse, ages, businesses.
Yeah. But that's affirmative action, isn't it? It's what used to be called positive discrimination, and people don't like that either.
But this interesting thing of, but you can't set out to do that. You absolutely fucking can.
Well, you absolutely have to. There's an imperative that we do. Otherwise, going back to what you were saying earlier, there will be no change. If we really want some kind of cultural change and shift and a paradigm shift, you have to. You have to say, this is actually my explicit aim.
Because you can also add caveats to it, right? You're obviously, if you say, right, we need to hire 5 women to bring balance to this business, you are not going to hire categorically 5 women if you can find 4 that you believe are right or right enough for the business, and the 5th you think is going to be a toxic fucking disaster, but you're like, I've got to tick that box.
Yeah.
No one's saying you have to be a fucking idiot and throw business principles out the window.
But also there has to be the acceptance.
But if you're not finding the right candidates, are you looking hard enough? Are you asking the right questions?
There has to be the acceptance that we don't live in a meritocracy.
Yeah.
So the argument is, it has to be fair, and then it has to be given to the person who is right for the job and best for the job and has the most experience and all that kind of stuff. But there might not have been any of those opportunities.
Who decides those parameters?
Who decides those parameters? But also, we don't start at the same starting block.
No.
We don't live in a fair situation. So, of course, if you are, the typically privileged white male, and then there's things like mini-me recruitment, which is recruiting in, the mirror image of yourself, which is how boards end up all looking the same, because people are kind of like, oh, you're like me. You're me 10 years ago.
There's more CEOs called Phil or something.
Called John, exactly, in the FTSE 100.
Hilarious and equally terrifying statistic.
Hilarious. So yeah, you absolutely have to. You have to say we're going to address this head on, and it is uncomfortable. It's quite difficult to have these conversations. It's a bit like, the trans debate and the gender conversation at the moment with a younger generation, which I'm not going to get into.
Yeah,
now. But you can't go into these things thinking, oh God, there's going to be loads of like potholes here for me to fall into, because there are. Like, you're going to say something wrong.
Yeah.
You're going to use, outdated language.
You don't have to get it all right.
You might say something that sounds like a contradiction, but there's George Monbiot says this brilliant thing, which is, I would rather be hypocritical and making mistakes and sort of sounding like I potentially got double standards or I haven't got it all quite worked out and trying really hard to do the right thing, than be a bystander on the sidelines, not doing anything, not creating any action whatsoever, and just calling out the person who's trying really hard.
Yeah.
Because we can't do this in a perfect way.
No, you can't get it perfect.
We have to imagine that we're going to trip up and fail, right? And embarrass
it's like any
ourselves.
Business.
And yeah.
You talk about improving a business. You don't go out and overnight improve a business by 35, 40% by some miracle cure. No. It is those 1 or 2% increments that you implement.
And it keeps happening. You keep learning.
Exactly. And it's language and it's attitude and it's culture and it's how you frame it. And like you said, and just own the mistakes. Whoops.
And I
had no idea.
And I'm sorry. I'm sorry goes a really long way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really quite a simple thing to say.
And I'm sorry is a really good thing, and no is a really good thing. And also, and maybe this could end things, you also, when you really believe that something is morally right or not, you can also go, I get it and it might make me unpopular, but I'm not necessarily here just to make friends. There's something else bigger at stake. Yeah. And that's also quite empowering.
And on that note, I'm sorry to say we have run out of time. So the
if you've got this far, if you're still with us,
Ellie and I struggling to find words in there and really struggling to find topics to cover. It was
so awkward.
It's a lot of fun. I think there's probably going to have to be an Ellie part 2 at some point down the line. But look, hopefully we've touched on some things that get people's thoughts going. If you're not already familiar with Ellie and Brickworks, reach out, connect, check out the business. Ask questions, engage with the debate. If there's stuff we've talked about today, engage with one of us, both of us, any of us, none of us.
This service isn't over either, because the Law Society have put this new guidance out, but we've got to get the SRA on board fully, and
Yeah, I mean, Ellie and I think, are both used to not being everyone's cup of tea. I don't think anyone should ever be anyone's cup of tea. So if you do think we're absolutely full of it and you just want to call us a bunch of, waffly, come at me. Ellie's had enough. You can focus it on me. Ellie's had enough of that shit.
This year.
But no, hopefully we've triggered started some itches. It scratches you might itch you want to scratch.
There's going to be a big socialism conversation now.
I was trying to end this really nice and cleanly, and I'm waffling again. So I'm sorry, I'm waffling again, but we are wrapping that one up. Hope you enjoy it. Let us know, and be back soon. Bye.